Welcome to Bill and David's Bogus Hangout. I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. Zara?
Hi, I'm
Yes,
Sarah.
we are.
I'm Sarah Altair, and I'm a semantic writer and love being here. I learned so much.
Terry?
Terry Van Horn. Got a new website coming out, SEO Radio, putting all podcasts on there now. And hopefully, and good chance it'll be using Google AMP, folks. Don't fall off your chairs.
SEO Radio.
SEO
Yes,
Radio.
I like that.
I like it
Yeah,
too.
it's the Canadian version. The American domain was taken, but the Canadian one, and I'm in Canada anyhow, so makes more sense.
That sounds good. And I'm Bill Slosky, author at SEO by the Sea, and I'm the director of SEO research at Go Fish Digital. So SEO Radio, it's going to be the home of podcasts, and so we're talking a little bit about AMP.
Yes.
And we mentioned upgrades to AMP. So there's one that's been in the news a bit. They're introducing XML sitemaps into WordPress. And that's coming out in WordPress version 5.5. They're introducing... We've got a time loop.
Yep. So I was interested to see that because that's been one of my, I'm not a big fan of any of those plugins for sitemaps. I do it another way.
So this new one is straight from WordPress. But
it's built right into the core.
right. And then does Google find that sitemap?
Yeah, that's another thing that I found odd. It's not in the root; it's in its own folder, which
ideally Google will come by every 24 hours or so and grab your robots.txt file, and you should have a sitemap statement in your robots.txt file where you tell Google where your sitemap is at. You're also telling every other search engine.
I forgot about that. That's my bad. I had a note in it about, hey, maybe not the best idea.
And the other thing that's exciting about WordPress 5.5 is they're updating the version of jQuery that's included in it, or they're starting to. It's going to be like a three version transit from the version now to a newest version. So that ought to help WordPress sites become a little bit quicker because it'll get rid of some of the slow scripts from jQuery. Which is sort of
also non-compliant for. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it's sort of good timing because we're moving towards a time when Google's going to be using some of the user experience signals and speed type signals to rank pages, and they're going to affect how well pages rank if Google updates jQuery over 3 versions of WordPress. That means the timing will be right about when it'll be complete when they want to see that increase in speed. So it's going to speed up a lot of WordPress sites.
Yeah, there's also a header you can add for security that you can't add because if you have a WordPress site, because that header would stop your site from working if you did.
And that's because of the older version of jQuery.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exploitable. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So they have a plugin that's available now that you can use to test your version of your site, what you're using, with newer versions of jQuery.
Oh, and see the difference in the speed?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And just make sure everything's compatible on your
Oh,
site.
right, with the plugins and stuff you have on your site.
Right.
That's important.
Very important.
Yeah, it's a good thing to do. I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to be trying.
Yeah,
Make
it'd
sure
be
that everything's
interesting to
perfect.
see how much faster it makes it with the newer version of jQuery.
So when you
Oh.
say they, who is it that has the testing site for the old and
I-
new version?
I'm not sure who it is who put out the test, the plugin test.
And Google now supports jQuery, correct?
I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that.
How do I say it? I think when you download it, it comes off their servers and says it comes from Google, doesn't it? The
I
new
don't
versions. I believe
know. I
so.
don't. Yeah.
For some reason, I think just like Google bought URL redirection script, nobody knew about it. I saw somebody the other day use it, saying I just installed this, and I thought to myself, "Oh, Google's going to be real happy about that."
So Google is doing some interesting things. They got rid of the, or they introduced the rich results test page
Right?
and got rid of the structured data testing tool.
Is it all the way gone now?
No,
Well, the structured data testing tool, I think, is gone, isn't it?
no, still there.
No, it's gone
It's
yet.
still
And
there.
it will be for a while. And John, Mr. Mueller said that there's a good that if enough people keep asking for it, and instead of saying, "Oh, woe is me, why did you take my toy away?" If you said why you needed it, we might consider putting it back. And I myself never used it for anything but to validate my code.
Well, they're going to be updating the rich results test, right?
Yeah.
So it can do validation and so on.
I believe that they'll put that validation tool back into the results. It won't be called that anymore, but there will be the ability to validate your code. That's why people were upset when they took it away.
Yeah.
Because the rich result tool might be a little more useful if you were trying to use the code to get into the SERP, if you know what I mean. Which is what the new tool does really well, correct? Or the goal is to do that.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal.
Let's call it the
I'm-
goal, eh, Billiard?
I'm not going to make a value judgment on the tool at this point.
Okay. No benefit of the doubt, eh?
I've been using Google a long time.
Oh, I see. You aren't disappointed that way, eh?
Mm-hmm. You see Google introduce some tool and it stays around for a while, and you start using it, and then the next thing you know, it's gone.
Right.
Right.
And you see them making moves like Google Plus links now redirect to Google Current pages.
There
What's
are still
Google Current?
Google
Google
Plus
Current.
page.
Google Current is the next social network from Google.
Right.
Oh, so they're going to collect some more data, are they? Just going to give it a new name. Let's give this experiment a new name, and we'll just do the same thing over again.
So what was the name of the Google social network that was before Google Plus?
Google Places.
No.
No?
The one that was big in India.
Oh, not familiar.
I think
Orchid. Orchid. It was named after the guy who developed it. Orchid. Yeah.
But,
you remember Orchid?
Yeah.
Social network? Yeah.
You know, in some ways, you could look at Google Plus and say that was just a big lab to eventually get what became Google My Business. In some ways. For people who used it for business, I think it was like a lab for them.
There were aspects of Google Plus that were derived from other things, like the authorship markup, the rel equals me and rel equals author was sort of replaced by the profiles in Google Plus.
Mm-hmm.
With your profile links to your properties.
Right.
You no longer created links with rel equals me. You instead created a link to those, your Twitter page, your Facebook page, and so on, and put them in your profile in your Google Plus.
That was for like a personal deal. For business, it was a little different. You had, I believe it was called Google Places. And that's what became the brand pages on Google Plus.
Google Places became the Google My Business pages.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, in a lot of ways, just was after they shut down Google Plus. Some of that stuff went over to Google My Business as well.
And they added things that supposedly made it a little bit more social, like the Google Posts. Created
the Google My Business.
Yeah.
Right. You could post for your business. You can still post like that for a business on your Google My Business page. You can use it almost exactly like you did your Google Plus pages. You know,
you can.
What I liked about Google Plus is it actually built or, basically innovated a new experience on the web in the Hangouts. Like that exploded video.
Yeah, it did.
Or at least did in this community and industry. I don't know about others, but it definitely did in this one.
So have you seen the information about badges for Google My Business pages?
Yeah, they're like a badge, yeah. And kind of like they used to have for businesses. You could get ratings for your business right on the experience.
Yeah.
And this seems to be like a merge of those two things together.
One of the things I was a little bit disappointed with is last year a patent came out that said Google's tracking when people go to different businesses and keeping track of how long they spend there. And one of the Google blogs said we're going to start giving out badges for the most popular local businesses.
That's like Foursquare.
They'll like pick different types of businesses like restaurants, and they'll say which are the 3 most popular restaurants people go to in the town they're in, and they'll give badges to those.
So they're popularity badges?
So the
So this
popularity
might be-
badges, but they said they were going to introduce those at the end of last summer, and they never
And then
came
they
out
decided
with
to charge for them and monetize it.
them. So they're coming out with some other types of badges. They're not quite the same. They're not like most popular local business, restaurant or museum or whatever.
Well, you
But-
just pay more for those. They're coming. That's next. That's what's up next, Bill. Be a little bit more money.
So
Buy
so
your way to the top.
I was reading that the badges that Google is offering now are something they had asked people about in a survey, and they said, "Is this something you would consider paying for?" And enough people said yes, so they held out their wallet hands and said, "Give me." So local badges might be another give me.
So then,
Could be. Not
so then-
everybody sells stuff on their website. So it's kind of like the other was for people for sales on the site, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this, you don't necessarily have to be selling on the site. You have to
Right.
be willing to pay to put it on yours.
Yeah. But it's
But if
but
you're
it's
reviewing
it's like-
people,
but
that's
it's like
actually
yeah. But it's
a
like an
benefit.
Amazon badge, top store, top e-commerce store, whatever.
right.
Yeah.
Top of the category type thing.
Yeah. Top of the category.
Right. Again, monetization of the local listings. They've been looking for that one for a while, so don't be surprised.
And it's a potential traffic driver. And when I say traffic, I don't mean search traffic or web traffic. I mean cars and pedestrians and
Yeah. People
Bicycles
going
and-
directly there
Yeah.
from seeing it in the search.
right.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a positive zero-click experience.
Oh, they're all positive. It's how you look at it, Bill.
Uh,
To me, that's useless traffic anyhow. So you save money by not having to serve the pages. You know, I don't get paid for driving just traffic. I get paid for traffic that other people make money on. So,
well,
that's only a good model for websites that get paid by the view, right?
how often do you go into a store with no intention of buying anything?
Me, not very often. I don't leave the house unless I know where I'm going and exactly what I'm doing.
I mean, there's some places I go where I window shop. I'll just look around. But when I go to the grocery store, I'm usually always going to walk out with bags in hand.
yeah.
Yeah. To me, that always seemed I was living with someone that was a big hobby.
Window shopping?
Yep. I said, yeah, you can look at it, but you don't have to buy everything you see.
Yeah. There's some stores that always have new stuff, like antique shops or thrift stores or whatever. And sometimes you go to see what they have, and if it's something you like, you might leave with it.
Yeah, sorry, that ain't me.
So that's the kind of traffic that the badges are going to.
Well, with local
Not
badges,
really.
with local
Yeah.
best local restaurant, best local
Right, local.
convenience store. Well, maybe not convenience store. Best local antique shop.
Yeah, that
Things
isn't
like that.
what they're implementing. What they're implementing now is something quite a bit short of that.
Right. But that's what they were saying that they would implement last year.
But
And I
now
don't.
they change it.
I think
They
someone told them that's not going to be a good idea unless you want to get sued. Because isn't it, I believe, advertisers can't even say they're the best unless it's by a blind pit taste test and all that other stuff, right?
they weren't necessarily going to use the word best. They might have
Okay.
used the words most popular.
Okay.
In which
And they can
case,
base that just on queries for the restaurant or whatever. Yeah, that makes sense.
actual visits to the places.
Okay.
Because they can tell using GPS.
By people actually going in the store that
Yeah.
they're tracking.
Right.
Yeah, Android users, turn it off.
Well, so they're not necessarily getting all the Apple people, but some of them they are, because Apple Maps still has some issues.
Yeah, but I gotta believe that Android phones have a pretty high percentage of the market when you look at all the phones that are being sold. And the percentage that's on the Android platform and the percentage that's on, I don't know what's it called, iOS or whatever.
iOS.
Yeah,
iOS.
I drew a blank there for the moment.
So Apple Maps has been working on improving their mapping, their navigation feature. But as far as I know at this point, they're not quite there yet. Because they were delivering people to places like the middle of the Atlantic.
That's usually not a good thing.
No, you don't drive to Bermuda.
Yeah. Be a short trip.
Yeah. So not too many submersible cars these days.
So let's go back to Google My Business and badges
Yeah.
and tracking people.
Okay.
So you have a badge on Google My Business that says you're the most popular, whatever, fill in the blank. And then someone goes to that business. Is it always connected to their visit to Google My Business? How do they track? How do they track?
They track you using the navigation system, your location history in your phone.
Okay.
So
remember,
so
And it's
this
triggered by visiting the business with the badge. Is that correct?
is triggered by visiting the business. The badge is a signal that they visited the business.
Okay.
That's something that was we were told in the Google Webmaster blog that they were going to start doing at the end of last summer, and they never put in place. They didn't, and there's a patent that describes it too.
Okay.
It's like the patent that talks about the busyness features in knowledge panels, the ones that tell you what hours are busiest at a store.
Right.
And how long people tend to spend at a store.
Which that stuff probably comes almost straight out of GMB, right? The business hours and all that stuff.
Well, the business hours comes out of GMB because website owner writes the business hours. But the amount of traffic they get during those hours comes from the location history information in your Google device, in your Android device.
Right. So that's what I don't think I was.
So that's kind of like
directly. There's a difference between tracking someone who visits the Google My Business page from traffic that comes because people walk into the store, which is going to be the traffic busy hours. it's going to be different. It's going to be two different, well, at least two different sources of getting people to your business.
Right.
And at least one Google knows it's real people.
Right.
So the traffic to your website isn't an indication of how busy you are.
No, I've got that part. I'm just saying the busy part is based on all traffic. It isn't based on just people who come to that store from Google My Business listing.
Right. It's all traffic, all people with Android phones who have location history turned on. Yes.
Okay.
Which that's kind of like at Christmas when they count the cars in the parking lot to decide which stores are doing well and which aren't.
Yeah.
And Google did acquire a satellite company that did that.
That is huge. If you watch American channels at Christmas, business channels, I watch CNBC, and that's huge during that time.
I think
they have someone on and reports every day.
I think the name of the company Google acquired was Skybox. So it's not Skynet. But it would fly over different businesses, see how many cars were in the parking lot.
Confused. That's a Terminator thing.
Right. Skynet was the artificial intelligence that tried to destroy all the humans.
In Terminator.
David says, I wonder how many people realize that tracking on their device.
Well, they tell you a number of times.
They do tell you, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't realize that.
People don't care. Like younger people especially. They're
I think most, I mean, like me, I'm happy that I have something that will give me directions to places.
Yeah, right.
So I remember driving with paper maps. And it's like sometimes you've got to unfold that map and figure out where you're at. And driving down the road 50 miles an hour is not the time to do that.
Really? Or at night? I used to get, I would get like in the old days of directions, and you'd get a direction and you go on 5th Street in San Diego. And then all of a sudden there's a white fence and a big canyon, and somehow you had to figure out how to go around so you could get to the other side of the canyon.
Got to make that left turn on India Street, and you missed it.
Yeah. So I'm very grateful for the modern, updated directions that tell me how to get somewhere, and it was always at night. That was the other thing. And then you're parking your car and you're turning on the light and you've got a map. I mean, it's like, hit me first because I don't know where I am.
And then some cities, they had these booklets that were maps that didn't unfold like most paper maps. And you could turn the pages and try to find the right page where your destination is, where you're going to. And sometimes you had to go from one page to another, and you had to link them up. And that was
that's
confusing.
right. I remember those. And then because it was here to here on this page to here on that page, and you're like trying to make it go. Yeah, I remember those. Yes, I'm very grateful for the directions.
Yeah. And then it knows how busy the highways are that you're going down and stuff like that. Say there's an accident 5 miles ahead. Traffic should slow down in about 2 miles or so. You're 15 minutes behind your destination time because it was slowed down. I like having that information.
Yeah, I do too. They also they tell you, there's a slowdown wherever,
Yeah,
but you're still on the fastest road.
yeah. And if you use Waze, it tells you there's a police car parked on the side. There's a speed trap. Uh, so it's a little more detailed than Google Maps.
Right. They don't tell you about speed traps. Actually, when I moved here, my son told me where all the speed traps are.
The tricky thing, though, is that they move them.
They do. Some are pretty traditional, though. Yeah.
If
And you
some
don't know if the period of time where you're going by is the time when somebody's there.
some spots are just the ideal places for police officers to hide their cars.
Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
Bill,
Yeah.
we were talking about the AMP pages and whatnot, and
Yeah.
there were three items that I had in the list there.
Yeah.
One is on context of for top stories,
Yeah.
and then you have the other two articles, which are basically talking about using the testing tools on web stories and AMP stories.
Yeah. So top stories used to be AMP only last year. And
Right.
they expanded top stories to all types of pages, not just AMP. But they just said that they're showing context information with top stories.
Yeah.
And there was a patent that came out last year about top stories where they said they're going to show two other types of things in addition to top stories. One of them is they're going to show editorials. So you might see a top story in a certain topic and then see an editorial page that's related to that topic.
Right.
Which they're trying to give you a wider range, diversity of information. Right. They're trying to break you. They're trying to break you out of a filter bubble.
Right. And what I thought was interesting about it too was they use the example of the stimulus package that just came out, and how you could mistake the two for one another, and the context was kind of to show you these two are the newer articles on this, because it was also with a whole bunch of the other ones around it, which, could be very confusing. And I think that shows how Google is learning how to use the context more and more when you see it using it in ways like that.
So a top story isn't necessarily the article you're seeing as top story result. A top story might be Washington, D.C. is going to release a stimulus package next week. And the story that they show for that top story might be from one of many results. It might be from CNN. It might be from the Wall Street Journal. It might be from the World Weekly News.
Right.
Right. So the choice of which article that shows your top story might be chosen from things like which articles tend to get shared a lot on social networks, gain lots of pluses, or gain lots of likes, or things like that.
Which is, again, when people doubt that there are social signals that can help your SEO, well, there you go, folks.
Or if the story is getting lots of queries and people are selecting certain results in response to those queries, that may help Google decide which page they'll show as a top query, as a top story. So they're using that mix of signals to decide what to show.
Right. They've been doing that for a while, though.
Yeah.
That's how they become more and more able to be the first people putting something, with news. They're usually the best place to look is Google to find breaking news.
Right. So those top stories are considered carousels, right? And you're using carousels in a number of ways. They're also, if you look for a place, like you look up Carlsbad, California, they might have a carousel at the top with things to do in Carlsbad, California. And they'll show 3 different types of things to do. Like
Right.
Legoland, the beach, and places they think, and they're trying to make
museum.
what's that?
The music museum.
The Museum of Making Music. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's only coincidental that carousels are part of AMP.
So when carousels first came out, a lot of the stories that went into carousels were AMP stories, but not exclusively. So the other thing they're using carousels for is showing ranked entities. So if you do a search for best novels of 2020, they'll show a carousel result with like the top 20 best novels of the year. And
that's
they're
kind of like how they prepare lists, right?
They're creating a mini knowledge graph. They're taking all the search results on a search for best novels of 2020, and they're extracting entities from those pages, and they're putting those entities into carousels.
And they can also kind of like using links as an example. As votes, they could use those as votes for the carousel.
Well, one of the things that because they're at the point where they're now crawling pages for facts and they're connecting attributes to those facts, they could, instead of crawling links, they may say, okay, somebody searches for houseplants that improve air quality. So they may do that knowledge graph and extract all the houseplants that are listed, and then look for attributes that say improves air quality. And those are the ones I'll show in that carousel.
Right.
So they're doing attribute extraction along with the entity extraction to create those carousels.
Okay, so right there, you plugged into 2 other topics. One is attributes. The post on optimizing your Google product feeds with attributes.
Yeah.
Very good. You can look at that and say, for a manufacturer, if you had a product feed, right, and you're Nike,
yeah,
they could pull entities right out of it and associate all kinds of things and attributes.
So sort of like the way people are using product feeds to include additional attribute information and category information, they may do that with schema at some point too. Like recipe schema, they might include information about whether or not something has a certain amount of calories. So you can do searches for sandwiches under 300 calories. And they would pull recipe results with calorie counts.
Yeah.
So they could use schema attributes for that. Well, with the product feeds, you do search for T-shirts, cotton. And cotton is a product attribute. So they're going to create carousels, product carousels, and show you the ones that are made out of cotton.
Yeah. I found when I was working on optimizing a product feed, filling in as many attributes as possible seemed to have a positive effect. Can't, verify that it was a ranking factor, but let's say when I added them, it seemed to do a little better.
And they also have that similar product feature now. So if
Like
someone does a search, related product. So you stand a chance of benefiting if you have that product feed submitted, even though you're not necessarily selling using the product feeds. You're not using that as advertisements. But when they first introduced that, Amazon started using product feeds for the first time.
I started with my first product feeds were built a long time ago.
Yeah.
First store I ever built from scratch. That was a big part of the job, was designing something that could make multiple feeds out of the database.
And how important is it to categorize your products well?
Well, it helps to get them seen in the right place, Bill. That was my experience anyhow.
Right. Now, I have a friend who worked for a very large e-commerce website, and most of what she did for that website was data quality because they had some issues with how they categorized things.
Oh, don't get me started.
And once she improved that, they started making a lot more money.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah. So there was a patent that came out about product feeds last year too, which described how search results will use that category information in displaying products. So if you search for iPhones, your results will show iPhones. You search for iPhone accessories, your search results will show chargers and cords and so on, but they won't show the actual iPhones, even though the word iPhone is in your query.
Yeah.
Because they know that you're looking for the accessories.
Well, it's also the category selection in Google is one of the most important choices you make, especially for optimizing it.
Right. So if you have an e-commerce site, it makes a lot of sense to have that product feed and have everything categorized well, and make sure you take care of the data quality of your categories and so on in that product feed.
If I were building a store now, I would download their, I guess you would call that
taxonomy,
and use that to build my website.
Absolutely, yeah. And those are available, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. It's right on the web. They even tell you how to choose.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things. The documentation is pretty good on Google Feeds.
So you were saying two things when I mentioned attributes.
Oh, to deal with the same thing, the rich snippet tool, things that it's surfacing. On the attributes, kind of associated to that would be the fact checking schema. I was not aware that you could put that right in the page when you had facts that you could verify from a third source. I didn't know that Google had schema to do that, or that they supported it or even looked at it.
And do you think that that helps with indexing, that you're covering those facts?
Okay. Again, comes to how easily it is to extract them when you make it
Yeah.
that easy to identify them. I mean, that's what it's about now. Entities and their associations, extracting them, optimizing that.
So it's sort of identification through a back door. You're saying this is definitely about this topic.
Yeah. And
This
I
page is-
verified that the facts that I have on my page
Yeah.
are from a third source that's worth, mentioning.
Yeah. So when you're using schema and you're using same as markup or something like that, you're providing identification of the entity that your page is about. Same with this fact checking. You're saying, okay, this is a topic that has been verified specifically, and is this fact
associated to this entity has been verified, which, in my opinion, makes it more attractive as a rich snippet to go as a featured snippet in the search.
and you're providing identification of it. So you're making sure that your page is, you're giving context to your page. You're
Right. You're showing that my
It's
facts, I
ambiguous.
actually have checked them. And
Yeah.
here's where you can go to find that out. And it's just like Eat for websites. You have a link to the author. The author has a bio, making that accessible. That's all that's really about. It's not an algorithm. It's just how people use the web.
it's like providing provenance when you're selling an antique. Like
Right.
yeah.
And it's good for users when you're using facts to sell your products. This seems like a really good way to verify those facts for people.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I'm a little skeptical of most things I read on the internet.
The more I read on the internet, the more skeptical I become. Yes. There's a lot of information on the web, and some of it's right.
Some of it's dead wrong. But these are the type of things that I think are becoming more and more where SEO is going. That, it won't be about writing and putting words on pages. It'll be identifying these kinds of opportunities and knowing how to implement them. That's where SEO is going. The link stuff is, it's only going to do so much.
Yeah. So one statistic that I've seen says that words that have more, the percentage of words that have more than one meaning is about 40%.
Ooh.
In English.
Okay. In English. So
English is really bad for that, though. It's probably one of the worst.
Well, depending upon the language and the culture, you're going to see different words that maybe have the same meaning that are completely different words. Like, how many different types of snow are there in Icelandic? We've got words here in the United States that are very different, have very different meanings than the same words in England or Australia, like football. Completely different things in each country.
Yeah, I was watching some Australian football, and it looked more like I don't know. It's different. It's a man sport, that's for sure.
That would be like Beyond Rugby. I don't think I've ever watched it.
Oh God, yeah.
So I'm not quite sure of the rules, but
There are none that I could
There
see.
are no.
you do certain things, you get a certain amount of points. You do other things, you get other amounts of points. So there are some kind of rules.
Yeah. I mean, just the way they bring guys down. Like,
Okay,
no wonder more people don't get
Australian
hurt.
football. I don't think I've never watched Australian football.
It's hard to see it. I saw it because there was nothing else for the sports channel to put on.
So 2 months ago or so, there was like cornhole world championships.
Oh, they had the hot dog eating championships on there one day.
So what was the point you were going to make about the 40% of words that have
Okay.
more than one meaning?
So when you have words that definitely have more than one meaning, you want to include context words on your page.
Oh.
Because when you include those context words, you tell the search engine which meaning of your word they should understand.
Okay.
So when you have a jaguar and it's a cat that lives in the woods, or a car that drives around real fast, or somebody who wears a helmet and lives in Jacksonville, knowing those things by the words that accompany the use of jaguar helps the search engine. It provides context. It gives it meaning. It helps to understand if your page is the one that a searcher might be looking for.
Yeah, I think that's why it's good to put that kind of schema in the head of your document, so they can see right away that this is about the Jaguar football team, not
so you can use schema. You can also use it as content on your page. I would prefer to use both.
3 JSON and structured data, braces and belt, or suspenders and belt, double protection.
It doesn't hurt you to be redundant in those cases.
No, I don't believe so. I don't think they penalize you for that. And you have to always keep in mind that there's more than one search engine out there. There's not just Google, there's plenty more. They don't really show up, but you never know.
So
there's the fact that that makes your site machine readable as well when you add structured data. So, which again, one of the people that Dave and I interviewed on Search Geeks was the SEO from one of the major electronics stores, Best Buy, and they implemented schema way back in the day. He said they definitely saw not just Google, but other bots start increase their interest in the website.
So there are conferences for semantic web practitioners, like their SEO conferences.
Right.
And the guy from Best Buy used to go to the semantic web conferences.
Oh, okay. He's an interesting guy to talk to, that's for sure.
He would speak because he was involved in implementing that type of stuff.
Oh yeah, he was probably the first major store to do it that I could find anyways.
Well, some of the stores were doing it using APIs. So you would look at their site, try to find the schema, and you wouldn't see the schema. They weren't actually putting it on their pages.
Right. They were just using it to categorize and whatnot.
Well, I think one of the things now about text, along with schema, is just what Bill was saying, is that the words that are around that topic, like jaguar, the words in the text are also clues about what this is all about as well.
And that's what things like BERT are about. They learn about the co-occurrence of words on your pages to get a sense of what your pages are about.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it compares it to all the other ones about the same thing.
Right, exactly, and you know, I mean, it's really miraculous, because a few years ago that wasn't a powerful indicator of what your web page was about, whereas now it is. The co-occurrence of the words. What words surround that word? You know.
They use context pretty well from day one, at least around links, anyhow.
They've been using co-occurrence. They've been writing about them. I've been seeing the concept in patents for the last 15 years. They don't talk about it as much as things like BERT.
Right. Yeah, I know, because whenever this was, like 7 years ago or something, and I was investigating, and it was about, and this was it was about keywords, and the search engine's ability to discover the other words in the text to give context to whatever your quote keyword was at that time.
Yeah.
So it has been around for a long time, but I know I was just kind of beginning my, writer who's trying to understand SEO adventure, and I know I got a lot of pushback from some SEOs at that time about that, and I'm like, no, it's actually happening.
If you're not getting pushback from SEOs when you try
You're
something
probably
new,
doing it wrong.
you're probably doing something right.
Yeah, right. Sorry.
Yes,
I mean, I first agency I was working at, we were charging people by the keyword, by the number of keywords in a campaign. Like we would charge them a certain amount of money because we were optimizing for 7 keywords.
Okay.
We'd charge a little bit more optimizing for 11 keywords, and a lot more if we're optimizing for 21 keywords. And I'd started doing the optimization of those pages, and started doing things like global changes to top level navigation and stuff like that. And they said, "Why are you doing that, Bill?" I said, "Because it works."
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't give up on the concept, however much pushback I got, because the more I read about it, it was actually one of the very first things that I was reading about SEO. So,
Yeah.
You have to plunge in somewhere.
Yeah. It's good to try new things too.
Mm-hmm.
Heaven forbid.
I mean, who was the first person to eat mushrooms? Who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah, I know. The experimentation. Yeah. Right. And who was the first person to eat the poison mushroom? And
well, So mushrooms, you rarely eat the same poisonous mushroom twice.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. But it's like, but it's also, like deer, what's the word they use? For plants you can put in your garden that deer don't like. I want to
Yeah.
tell you that deer do not read. Deer do not read. And so it's 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 really about testing what works and what doesn't work
Yeah.
in your area, because the deer in this particular area have not taught each other that this is a bad thing. And but I'm only using that as an analogy for SEO and what Terry was saying, because if you're not always testing what you're doing, what's the
Yeah.
point?
So my mom did a lot of gardening. She had a lot of books about things like which plants to grow next to other plants, companion
Right.
plants.
Right. Companion
So,
plant.
so you'd plant marigolds next to certain
Right.
types of vegetables, and would keep bugs away.
Right.
So she always had lots of flowers in her gardens. We always just have a 50-foot by 50-foot garden in our backyard.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah. My mother and father would go out every morning, pick a bunch of fresh vegetables, and we have salads.
That's kind.
And no deer.
We had deer, but we had like 7-foot tall
Oh,
fences.
you had deer fencing. Okay. I had a big vegetable garden once, and for some reason deer weren't a problem, but rabbits were. Jackrabbits would come in as the sun was going down.
Put mothballs around.
Yeah, well, I used to go out
Mothballs keep most animals
sundown
away.
with a
Cayenne pepper.
snow slingshot.
Also probably works. Anything that smells odd to them, they just say, nah, no thanks. I don't need to go near that.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know. And then of course there's gophers. So it's, you plant 3, 2 for the gophers, 1 for you.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
So we had a groundhog that used to live in the shed next to the garden.
Okay.
He lived under the shed, that is, rather than inside of it.
Right.
We had wire-haired fox terriers that used to like to play with the groundhog.
No, I'm sure. And they got to dig.
So the groundhog would go outside the fence and then would run back and forth, and the dogs would run back and forth with the groundhog too. So they'd spend half the day running back and forth along the fence.
Good job for terriers.
So I think we're past the top of the hour. We get through I think all of our stories.
Yeah,
today.
pretty well, most all of them.
Most of the stories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anybody have any notices or information that they want to share with their audience? We're still a few weeks away from Entity Hour podcast again, right?
That'll be, I believe, around the 7th, the 10th. I'm just looking up the date now, Bill, for when we're done. So,
Do you know what the next one is?
we're looking at the Mark Traphagen, last week we spoke about the structured data testing that or results that people had discussed with him.
Yeah.
We got in touch with some of those people too and are going to interview them
cool.
and see what we can
Mhm.
learn. And one of the people that's already for sure, they have an app called Schema app. And I think they have implemented Schema across a whole bunch of different kinds of sites. So they'll be interesting to talk to just beyond what they talked to Mark about.
It is one of the fastest growing areas of SEO. It's
Mhm.
worth looking
I
into.
would say so.
I
I
mean,
would say it's the future. If you're not learning it, then you don't plan on being in business very long.
there's a new update like once a month, once every 3 months. Yeah. Version
Well, I think it's
9.0.
in your toolbox. There's people who will specialize in that. But
Yeah.
I think the ability to know what role schema is playing on a website is important now for an SEO to understand and really, make his job a lot easier once they understand that. I was
And
actually last week doing a search and I wanted to see what would come up for semantic SEO.
yeah.
There's an opportunity. Look at the definition of it that's in the SERP right now.
Yeah.
Not even close.
I've seen a few articles that refer themselves as being like the end all to be all about semantic SEO, and they're so far off the mark. They're sad.
Yep. But I was kind of looking for the rich snippet for
Yeah.
the definition of semantic SEO, basically.
Yeah.
And the answer is not very good. It
Yeah.
doesn't really tell what semantic SEO is. It's someone who half-assed knew about it. The semantic web.
LSI keywords are not semantic SEO.
Sorry, folks.
Oh my gosh.
Anyhow, that's what we got planned for probably. I'm sure it's the 10th or the 17th. I'll know better next time we speak.
Good.
Looking it up now.
Sorry, the same phone spam day after day.
Phone spam.
Well, we're at 10 after. Thank you all. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye now.
everyone.